Well, good morning and welcome to the Wisdom of the Soul class. What are we up to? Number 17, I think. And with few exceptions, we're here every Sunday, 11 a.m. California time and 18 hours Greenwich Universal Time. Today, we're going to continue to talk about emotional intelligence. And I want to emphasize the idea that understanding your emotions and managing your emotions is an essential step towards spiritual growth and development. If you think about it, look what emotions, especially so called negative emotions, I mean, essentially, that's what I'm talking about. I've said this before, it bears repeating. They're negative only because they hurt or frustrate or irritate. That's generally what we mean by a negative emotion. Anger and hatred would be examples of, the most primary, basic, so-called negative emotion. And why do I say so-called, and why am I hesitant about using the word negative? Because they're incredibly valuable. As physical pain is valuable. You don't want to feel physical pain, but my God, the damage we could do to ourselves if we were not aware, if we didn't have these clues, these symptoms to say, hey, something's wrong. Like every time I read, I get a headache. Maybe I should go to the eye doctor. Or, every time I eat that particular spicy food, it upsets my tummy. Maybe I shouldn't eat that spicy food. Well, negative emotions, again, so called, uh, play the same role. They have the same value. They're clues, they're symptoms. The problem seems to be that we obsess on the stimulus and we overlook the fact that the emotion fundamentally is a personal response. If I were to speak aloud the same insulting sentence to 10 people, I think it's likely I would generate 10 very different responses. So the emotions we feel in life, whether they irritate us, frustrate us, humiliate us, embarrass us, anger us, lead to hatred, whatever, are our responses. They tell us about us. And part of understanding our emotions and developing emotional intelligence beyond just managing them, knowing what to do with them and how to respond, is taking ownership of the feeling and replacing our obsession on the stimulus. Oh my God, why would he say that? He really thinks I'm stupid? Or why would she uh, make me jealous? He made me feel this way. And they made me feel that way. And be careful of your language about being a victim of your own feelings. And obviously, there can be no peace and no happiness. And that's evidence that we're on the spiritual path. We're becoming more peaceful. The mind is becoming more still and less turbulent. And this is the source of happiness, is inner peace. Um, just as water, when it's disturbed, loses its clarity, we too lose our clarity. Our self awareness is shattered by a disturbed mind, just like water. So it needs to be peaceful and calm if we are to have expanded awareness and any sort of happiness. Got to get that in control. And it's surprising how many spiritual paths do not address this stuff at all. They just say, it's like Dr. Phil's approach, well, don't be angry. Don't do that then. What do you mean, don't get angry, right? How can you not? It's not about never getting angry or never hating or never being jealous or envious or frustrated. It's about how quickly you recover and how you respond, right? So, more on that today. An essential approach to spiritual and what I like to call transpersonal development. So let's do an opening meditation. What do you say? And then we'll rock and roll a little bit. And again, keep in mind that at the top of the hour, in about 47, 48 minutes, we'll do some Q&A, and I'd love your participation at that point. So get comfortable in your chairs. Get a sense of being balanced or centered. Remind yourself that we're going to take 10 or 12 minutes here to just slow everything down, to let go of our struggle and our reactive nature, and stop fighting with life, with our thoughts, with our feelings, and shift from living as a human doing to a human being, and just be. Imagine that, just be for about 10 minutes. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Move your awareness to the bottom of your nose and watch your body breathing. By the way, if you ever have a cold and your nose is stuffy and you're forced to breathe through your mouth, then watch your breathing there. Or maybe you'd be comfortable watching the rise and fall of your abdomen. But find a single spot wherever it is to watch your body breathing itself. And here's the point of doing this. Identify as the watcher rather than the breather. You could easily be the breather and hold your breath, or take a slow, deep breath, or pant. You could deliberately hyperventilate, or like a little kid who's angry, hold your breath till you turn blue. But then you would be the breather, instead be the watcher. And acknowledge that your body breathes itself all by itself. And this is non-attachment. Let go. Just as your thoughts could be applied to this task or that, we will in time address the idea of watching your thoughts without attachment, without applying those thoughts to a particular task, solving a problem, trying to make a decision, understanding why you feel the way you feel. There are those times when our thoughts, so-called, are task unrelated. Brain researchers call them TUTs, task unrelated thinking. In which case, you could be the watcher of your thoughts and realize you don't have to agree with every silly idea that runs through your brain. So we practice that by watching and breathing. Scan your body with your awareness. For just a moment, let's shift our attention and our focus and just from the top of your head to the soles of your feet. Create and sense a letting go feeling. You probably know the areas in your body where you tend to gather tension and maybe feel pressure. Those are tight muscles. Just let them go. You can do that. Feel your body softening, yielding to the wonderful feeling of relaxation. And if it ever feels like you're letting go of some sort of control, tell yourself, I am in control of the letting go of muscular tension. It's a wonderful affirmation to remember. And you can make it a point right now to decide to remember, to say to yourself, if it ever feels risky to relax, that I am in control of the letting go. And looking forward to learning the feeling of being at peace. Just for a few minutes, just for 12 or 15 minutes, ideally every day, but at least every other day. To do nothing other than practice being and observing yourself as you would watch a sunset or a sunrise. Sit in a beautiful meadow full of wildflowers, or wander through a cool, shady, wooded place. Reflect on that and notice how easily you can imagine having no worry. And no need to even judge. I can't imagine coming over a hill in the wilderness, in nature, and saying, this view that's opening up before me is not perfect. It's not good enough. It could be better. It's absurd to even think about such a thing. What if we could live our lives in that same way? Put down the game controller. Cease the micromanaging. Trust life. Think of yourself as softening like butter left out on the countertop. Slowly softening. Your appearance does not change. Your form does not change. But you can feel yourself softening. Feeling so safe and so relaxed. And consider that this day is new and fresh. Like watching a time-lapse film of a flower blossoming. I'm sure you've seen such a thing. Or flowers or mushrooms in a sped-up fashion, pushing their way up, reaching full maturity, and in the case of the flower, blossoming. Imagine 8 or 10 days of a flower growing and blossoming, compressed into a few moments. And then consider that your day, in the same way, is new again in every moment, unfolding and blossoming in the present moment. And that every minute, every second that we spend regretting something from our past or fearing something in our future is a moment that you miss the present moment. That you move outside reality and counsel your suffering. Again, your regrets and resentments from the past, your fears of what seems to be an unknown future, going in either direction, pulls you out of reality. You're living a dream. For those past memories and those future fears are simply images in your head. They're all made up. They're not real. Reality is an eternal instant. Eternal and infinite. The present moment. Blossoming, unfolding. Imagine that you can smell the freshness of the eternal instant. And that you vow to live here. And there will be times that we need to learn from the past and recall it. And times that we wish to plan our future and design it. But even that we do from the expanded awareness of the present moment, to be here now. More than a book title. A human being here now. Space and time. The space is here. The time is now. The present moment, eternal and infinite, new again, filled with opportunity. To learn from the past, to plan your future, from the peace and the joy. The tranquility of the here and now. With your awareness, again, scan your body slowly, sweeping elegantly from head to toe and back. To simply enjoy how it feels to just be. as if there were nowhere else you need to be, and nowhere else you'd rather be, but right here, as you, born again with each breath, new again with each tick of the clock. The freshness of the present moment. Know that peace of mind. This is the source of happiness for no reason. The assumption that we need reasons to be happy is a presumption, a false assumption. Happiness is your natural state. Joy, freedom, peace of mind, ease and grace and elegance, beauty. Healing, birthing, flowing, is your natural state. Imagine bringing these feelings with you without any effort whatsoever. No need to gather them up and collect them and carry them into the waking state. You are this. So simply form the intention to carry these feelings and this peace of mind with you into your day. Effortlessly. And for no other reason other than that it is true and good and beautiful. And I'm going to count to 3, not because I need to, just to give you the chance to transition. Number 1 is forming the intention to open your eyes in a few moments, to be at that point wide awake, as if this is a focused awake. And 2, imagine a gentle floating upward toward this wide awake state, feeling fine, rested, relaxed, and at the same time renewed and recharged and rejuvenated. And 3, open your eyes now, wide awake, back in the room, feeling fine, rested, refreshed, better than before, feeling better than before. Take a big breath and maybe stretch like you're waking up. Wide awake, feeling fine, better than before. I always get a buzz off that. Maybe when we go to questions in a half an hour, some of you can share your experience with that meditation. I think there's 3 approaches that we can talk about. I was going to say, this reminds me actually to tell you about the Zoom page I've added to my website where you can send your friends. I meant to mention that at the top. Just send your friends who you think would enjoy this class to my primary website, michaelbenner.com. And on that initial home page, you'll see a button that says free Zoom class. If they click on that, it now takes you to a page with a video and a bio about me and a coupon, a little form where the visitor to that page can leave their first name and email address. That's all it takes. And then they'll get the newsletter that you get on Saturdays with the link to the class in it. And that's it. First name, email address, Bob's your uncle. You're done. That's it. You get the email every Saturday, and I do encourage you to invite your like-minded friends. This may not be the place to introduce an angry person to the idea that, you know, those people that are really dedicated to being helpless victims and they really want love, but they'll settle for sympathy if you allow them to go on about how difficult life is and how miserable it is. And there is that. I mean, let's be honest. There are some terrifying things happening to our democracy right now. And I'm not going to get into politics, but I don't need to get into politics. You don't need to see it as political. It's about our freedoms, which we cherish whether we're left, right, or center. But there are always going to be those people who want their idea of the way life should be to be imposed on you. And they call that their freedom, and their rights conflict with your rights. That's got to be hashed out, but the system is so corrupt. We can't dwell on that. We can be aware of it, but we can't make a lifestyle out of that. You know, working at KPFK, I see so many people who have programs, or, you know, they're on-air hosts or they're producers or people attracted to that radio station who are using politics and world affairs. It could be climate change, eco collapse. There's a lot to be concerned about, as an excuse for their personal pain. So they want to change the world so that they benefit. It's understandable, but it's also backwards. We need to instead change ourselves so that the world benefits. What's that old saying? Everybody wants to change the world, but few consider beginning with themselves. It's always from the inside out, like the drop in the pool of water that radiates out. Change yourself, grow yourself, become all you can be. Seek to discern and develop your potential and give that to the world. What did Gandhi say? Be the change you want to be. So this may not be the best place for you to introduce somebody who's devoted to being a helpless victim, but I'll leave it to you. Each of you who are here, you can be the gatekeeper in deciding which of my friends would really, really enjoy this or may really benefit from it. And welcome them by just saying, hey, go to Benner's primary website, michaelbenner.com, click on the free Zoom class, and that'll take you to a page where you can leave your first name and email address. Okay, so I think the best place to continue to pick up where we left off in talking about the importance of emotional intelligence is to discuss the nature of fear. You know, I've written a book. I don't talk about my book a lot. Maybe I should speak about it more often. Fearless Intelligence. Fearless intelligence suggests, just in those two words, that fear makes you stupid. And it does. It doesn't lower your IQ except in the moment. What it does is shatter self-awareness. And we don't have to reflect for very long to think of times when we've lost it, where we got just so angry and out of our minds that we behaved like animals. And I apologize to the animals for insulting them, but you know what I'm talking about. And if you're going to be honest about it after the fact, when you cool off and calm down, there's probably a little bit of embarrassment or shame that goes with having lost it, so to speak. But then there's a part of us that rallies to our defense and said, no, you have every right to be angry. You need to always have anger and hatred and more fear at hand, at your disposal. We got to carry that grudge. We got to set those people straight. I can't let him get away with that. I don't want her to think that I'm going to put up with that. And here comes the struggle. Even though you're not in any danger, we get defensive. Boy, that's such a big trigger. When you find yourself defending a behavior that you know could be refined, gosh, I could have done that better, and yet here you are defending it. Ask yourself, who is it that I'm defending? What part of me am I defending? I just realized I have the gallery view up. Let me switch for the purpose of the video. And why do I believe, there we go, that I need a defense? Who am I defending, and why do I believe I need to defend myself? What if you don't need to ever defend yourself? What if you knew yourself well enough that you could just shine those people on? You know, sort of a enlightened whatever. Yeah, okay. In fact, maybe we could learn to even go one step further to compassion and consider that people that irritate the hell out of us, that deliberately provoke us, are terrified themselves. And that emotions are so contagious that if somebody is frightened, we find them frightening. A frightened person frightens us. When you're frightened by another person, it's because they're frightened. And that may be hard to see. When so much of our policy in this country, whether it's government or corporation or big unions that no longer represent us, or whatever the institution, as it becomes more and more corrupt and frustrate us and irritate us and even make us angry, it may be hard to see that these powerful people are terrified. That they may have tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe billions and billions of dollars. And they still are frightened children inside. That may be hard to see, but it's true. Just as people who laugh and giggle in our presence cause us to laugh and giggle for no particular reason. And you may even say to them, "What are you laughing about? I want to get in on the joke. What's so funny? Why are you giggling?" Like, because I'm alive, that's not enough? Because I have another day? Because I'm here? Because I am? Isn't that reason enough to be happy and giggle? No, I need to always have my anger at hand. Hell, if you're in a room with some people and you notice somebody yawning, there's a good chance you'll need to yawn. We're all hooked together. We're all part of one thing. There's only one of us here. And so, of course, emotions are going to be contagious. Be happy, you make other people happy. Be peaceful, other people are more likely to be peaceful. Show some leadership. God, if you're in this class, you are a leader. Express it. Stand up. Speak as an elder. Speak the truth and the wisdom that you know that attracted you to these kinds of studies with me and others. So, compassion, this is a huge field, and we'll talk about it more in the future. My focus today is on the elemental, fundamental fear when we go out of our minds. But just as a way of introducing the idea of what is compassion, it's empathy or sympathy. For now, I'm not even going to distinguish between those words, though they are a little different, with those who suffer. It's recognizing the unawareness caused by fear, the lack of intelligence, the destruction of intelligence at a fundamental level, shattered self-awareness caused by fear, which brings on suffering, and to see suffering in other people. The person you were angry at, the person that upset you, the person you wanted to just throttle. What if you could take a breath and look at them and say, "Oh my God, you must be suffering so much." That doesn't dictate a particular behavior other than letting go of your fear, which allows you to regain your self-awareness. A frightening person, anyone who frightens you, when seen as filled with fear, becomes less terrifying, don't they? They become what they are, frightened, like little children after a bad nightmare. And that's all they're experiencing, is not a reality that is actually dangerous. It's just a nightmare. We're just not in that much physical danger. We're safer than we've been in any time in our history. Google it. Check it out. Put in Google. Are we safer than ever before? Whether it's war or whether it's disease or tribal conflict. It may be swelling right now. I'll acknowledge that, the tribal conflict, but we're still safer than ever before. So we can resolve a lot of our anger and a lot of the fear underneath it with compassion, if you can go that far. But at least understand that those who try to frighten you, and who often succeed in causing us to be angry or vengeful or hateful, they're just filled with fear themselves. But your job is not to set them straight or fix them or ameliorate their anger, their hostility, their belligerence, or their fear. Your job is to compose yourself in the presence of that. It begins with a slow, deep breath or two. or 3 or 4. Slow, deep breathing reassures the amygdala at the base of the brain that you're really not in danger. Creating a letting go feeling in your body is a second message. Closing your eyes, though you can't always do that safely. Like driving a car and somebody cuts you off in traffic, you could take a slow, deep breath. You could relax. It's not a good idea to close your eyes, of course. But if you're in a situation where you could, that would be a meditation, wouldn't it? Those 3 things. To take a couple of slow, deep breaths, to feel a letting go feeling in your body. And to close your eyes are 3 messages to the lizard brain, the limbic system. That there's a lot of confusion, a lot that's unknown in front of you. A great deal of uncertainty in that about which you are unaware. But there's no danger. And so you let it go. So this is the theme of my book, Fearless Intelligence. The main theme is the idea, well, one of the main themes, certainly. The one I present first in the book is the idea that fear has nothing to do with danger. Don't count on the dictionary, because it'll tell you, I've checked many dictionaries, and every one I've ever seen, all the way up to the Oxford Dictionary, says fear is a response to danger. And they may concede if you look up the word anxiety, well, that's a little different. That's about confusion and uncertainty and things unknown. All fear, whether we call it fear or anxiety or stress, I think those are the main 3. The main 2 synonyms for fear would be anxiety and stress. But it can run from panic and phobia and paranoia, horror and terror on the high end, all the way down through various degrees of anxiety and stress, to routine worry, nervousness, mild apprehension, and, well, I do have a concern. It's all fear. How do we know it's all fear? And how do we know that it has to do with things unknown that are uncertain, about which we are unaware, as opposed to real, clear, and present danger? Because the antidote is knowledge and understanding. That's how we know it's all the same thing. Why do we do fire drills for children in schools? So that if a fire were, oh my God, I hate to admit it, now they do shooting drills for the same reason. One of the kids in Uvalde, when they were going through this shooting recently, all these children were massacred, was on the phone, on her cell phone to her mother, and she said, "Don't worry, Mommy, we drilled for this. We're prepared." God, as heartbreaking as that is, she was less afraid because they had prepared. I think the fact that they have to drill, I mean, a fire drill is one thing, a shooter drill is quite another. That alone has a traumatizing effect. These children are growing up in a world that appears to be much more dangerous than it really is. But there are dangers. And so the fact that they drilled, that they prepared, that they had some understanding and some knowledge allowed them to be less afraid. We do here in California and in another, what shall I say, geologically active places around the world, we do earthquake drills and we prepare for earthquakes. California, we prepare for wildfires, mudslides, and everything else. The Boy Scout motto, be prepared. What does that mean? It means if you have knowledge and understanding, your fear is diminished by that, don't you see? The danger is unmitigated. The likelihood of an earthquake, a wildfire, a mudslide, whatever. The danger is not affected. The real danger in the world, the likelihood of being impacted by the danger is unchanged. What the preparation does is create an expanded awareness, a better understanding. And now, when the fire happens, you're less frightened, you don't lose your wits, and you file out of school orderly in a line as you've drilled. And so it is with everything else in life. Emerson put it down in ink. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Knowledge is the antidote to fear. Let's give attribution to those who figured this out long before us. Emerson. Knowledge is the antidote to fear. Now, if I ever had the opportunity to sit with young Mr. Emerson, who I have great admiration for, so did Thoreau. Emerson was Thoreau's mentor, of course. The great American transcendentalist. I would have said, Ralph, buddy, don't you think understanding would be a better word than knowledge? There's a great Einstein quote. Einstein came long after Emerson as well. But he said about knowledge and understanding, he said, any fool can know things. The secret is to understand them. So understanding surpasses knowledge, right? So when we say knowledge is the antidote to fear, stress, anxiety, nervousness, worry, doubt, concern, panic, phobias, paranoia, and all these syndromes that come out of that, OCD and panic attacks and phobias and general anxiety disorder and sleeplessness and eating disorders. Depression is related in most cases to anxiety. It's real important to understand that understanding is the antidote. The more you know and understand, the more likely you are to keep your wits about you when you're upset. The sooner you can recover. It's not likely that you're ever going to get to a place, I'm giving myself a 3-minute warning here. It's not likely you're ever going to get to a place where you're not ever going to be angry. I think if somebody walked up to Jesus and poked him in the sternum with a long bony finger and said something nasty about his mother, that for just a minute his nostrils would flare and he'd think about cocking the guy. I think he sort of lost it when he overturned the tables of the moneylenders in the temple. I think it's likely that later in the day he said to himself, man, I could have handled that better. I hope they don't put that in the book. Whether you think Christ was a prophet or the Son of God, he was in a human body. That's the same dilemma every one of us face. We're not humans with souls. We're spiritual creatures in human bodies, and we often get pulled down into that animal nature. That's what's behind our anger and our outrage, even though we try to defend it and rationalize it later. Remember, who am I defending and why do I believe I need a defense? The more you understand about yourself, the more you know thyself. Right? Great wisdom from the East, the Middle East, and the West. Inscribed over the oracle to Apollo at Delphi 2,000 years ago. Know thyself. It's like on the way in, you're reminded, hey, buddy, this is about you. You're, you're not a victim of your life. Your life reflects what's going on in your mind. And that's not just your thoughts, but your heart as well. So when people say fear is an acronym, FEAR, for false evidence appearing real, fear is a nightmare. It's all made up. It's a response, not to danger, but to confusion, to uncertainty, to unawareness. The problem is it creates more unawareness, more uncertainty, and more confusion, and becomes a vicious cycle of fear and ignorance. And ignorance is frightening. And the fear shatters awareness, and we become more ignorant and more frightened and more ignorant. And if fear is a frightening word and ignorance is an insulting word, maybe we could call it anxiety and confusion. We'll lighten it up a little bit. But it's still a vicious cycle, don't you see, that pulls you down. The antithesis is love and understanding, peace of mind, which leads to, oh, I see, I get it, understand. So now I can relax, and that promotes even greater understanding. So now we have the same kind of cycle, only it's this beautiful, gentle upward spiral. And how do we get from one to the other? How do we get from the downward sucking toilet flush, the vicious cycle of fear and ignorance, to this beautiful upward dancing, spinning spiral of love and understanding? There are two tracks. And like a railroad, this is how I remember railroad, two tracks, two R's, like a railroad track. Relaxation and responsibility. Breathing, letting go, and replacing your obsession on the world and what it's doing to you with an understanding that your feelings are your response. Here's a crazy idea. Your feelings are your feelings. They're not done to us. They come from us. They're yours. Own them. Responsibility is your ability to choose a response. God, this is so liberating. This is so freeing. I've seen jaws hit the floor in seminars. People just freak out in certain cases when presented with this idea that their emotions are personal responses that reflect, they're subjective, right? Your thoughts are objective. They're about the world around you. Emotional feelings as a second intelligence devoted to understanding you, the internal landscape. That's what feelings are. And as we go to the Q&A here, let me add, and this is where we'll continue next week, all hurtful feelings, so-called negative, not because they don't have value, they're exceedingly value, but everything that hurts, irritates, frustrates. I mentioned anger and hatred, but jealousy, envy, even apathy. Even being emotionally numb hurts. That's a bit of an irony, isn't it? It hurts not to feel. Reflect on that. Everything that hurts emotionally is rooted in fear. There's some fear. I'll give you a clue, and then we'll go to Q&A. If you want to compose your question and put it in the chat box to Mindy, she'll call on you. And you can expand on it, but compose it and put it in the chat box now. Or any comment. Maybe just commenting on our meditation today. So let me give you an example. Anger is such a overwhelming negative emotion, sort of the king of the negative emotions, of hurtful, terrifying emotions. In that anger, and this is a great way to begin to dissemble it. I'm getting some kind of message here. Oh, it's one of my, I can get rid of this. This is one of my computer programs wanting to update. Imagine that. Interrupting my webinar to update a program. In the anger is hurt. To dissemble your anger, to begin to understand it and manage it, to recover the awareness, the intelligence, and the understanding that anger shatters, begin by saying, where do I hurt? Ow. I'm angry because it hurts. And I don't want it to keep hurting. But you know, anger often has sadness in it as well. And when you're angry, you may not feel that sadness. But if you sit with the feeling, you'll often hear this said by teachers like me, or read it in a book, or hear it in another seminar. Sit with it. Allow the feelings that you'd rather push away and attempt to push away, allow them to come in. No matter how terrifying they may be, let them come in, especially in a relaxed and peaceful meditative state. Let them come in and have their way with you. Even if you feel like you're going to be crushed or devoured or suffocated. This is part of being heroic. This is the hero's journey. To face your fear. I did an interview with Guy Finley recently, and I said, confront your fear. He took issue with that word only because we're not going to do battle with it. We're going to surrender to it. And so too with your anger and hatred and heartache of all kinds. Surrender to it. Yield to it. It's yours. I mean, it's already got you. Just stop resisting. That's the key. And I know it's terrifying. I've done it myself. It's absolutely, or it can be, depending on the magnitude of the heartache. But notice how we immediately obsess on the person that made us angry, or the event, or the circumstance, the damn Supreme Court, or the intransigent of senators and power brokers and billionaires, and you get so angry and so frustrated, and oh, I wish there's something I could do. I just don't have any control. Yes, you do. You have control over your feelings. They're yours. Breathe, relax, let the feeling come in and reveal itself to you. It will not devour you, though it feels like it may. It will not crush you. It will not suffocate you. It will, in a matter of moments or minutes, liberate you. And you may have to repeat the process a few times. It's very likely. And then once you resolve it, something else will come along. You can count on that. That'll upset you, irritate you, anger you, frustrate you, terrify the bejesus out of you. But to sit with it, as the teachers say, is to allow it to have its way with you. Allow it to sweep you away and carry you wherever it will, and then it reveals itself. A trick I've used with clients, I say a trick, a method, a tool that I've often used with private clients. And by the way, you know, I don't talk about it enough. I do private one-on-one work if you ever want. It's all on my website if you want to know more about that. Is to imagine the terrifying feeling as a little kid with a Halloween costume, and you say, forgive me, but you're frightening me. Would you take off that mask and that silly costume and reveal yourself? And the most terrifying feeling will do that if you surrender to it. It'll reveal itself, and it's always redeeming. It's always, oh my God, is that what this is about? Oh man. And you understand, and the understand vaporizes the fear because the fear was simply a representation of a failure to understand. That's what fear is, unawareness. Awareness is the antidote. Understanding, or what Emerson called knowledge, is the antidote to fear. Fear is a shadow. Shadows are often huge and distorted, but there's no substance to it. There's nothing. It's a nightmare. It's a dream. Hug yourself like you would a little child and say, everything's going to be okay. You just had a bad dream. These are phantasms of the mind. And there is going to be very minimal spiritual growth unless and until we learn to manage these terrifying feelings that cause us to obsess on a world beyond our control. Take ownership, you get control. Responsibility is the ability to choose your response. So we have to understand fear and know that all the feelings that hurt are based in fear. And all the wonderful, loving, joy, happiness, freedom, peace of mind, that's all a reflection of what we do understand. And those feelings say, stay the course, keep doing what you're doing. The fear and all of the hurtful feelings are a request for more information. It's just a message that says you're off course. You need course correction. Welcome it in. Oh, good. I'm a little dismayed that I'm off course, but at least I can get back on course now that I know I've strayed. Okay? More on this next week. So you must have questions or comments about that. Mindy, do we have any that are already in the chat box?
We do. I'd like to lead off by thanking you for that meditation and that discussion. It seemed particularly on point to me today, and I think to probably everybody sitting here. One I'll want to replay. My reaction to your meditation question is, number one, I didn't want to come back, especially today. It's like, don't make me come back. And number two, maybe you could talk about this a little bit. There is only one other question in the chat. What will it take possibly for me to reenact that feeling when you're not talking me through it?
The feeling of peace and harmony and freedom and joy and
It's
happiness.
almost a dissociated high where things go away and they're just it's almost an intoxicating calmness.
Yeah.
Very particular. It's very defined when it's there, and then you say one, two, three. I want to say no, because I may not get. I don't seem to be able to enter that state freely without the coaching, frankly.
Well, it's interesting that you would say it that way. Don't seem to be able to. Um, haven't been able to is a much better way of saying it than I can't.
Mhm.
So kudos to you for sidestepping I can't. You just haven't been able to, or as you said, don't seem to be able to yet.
Mhm.
But there is no coming back. The suggestion that I give about bring these feelings with you is sort of a transition to the understanding that what you experienced in that meditation is your natural state. The wide awake state is unnatural. And yet that's where we live, and that's where our friends live. And the more stress and the more anxiety and the more fear there is in our lives, the more wide awake we become. If you look at it in terms of brain waves, and I know you understand this given your background in science, the higher the frequency of those brain waves, the more easily distracted we become. The more anxious and more nervous, the more stressed, the more fearful we become, the higher the brainwave frequency, and the more confusion, and the more we feel that all of these thoughts, this frenzy, this monkey mind, as the Buddhists refer to it, all these ideas demanding your attention at the same time. Listen to me, do this. What about that? You didn't do this. When are you going to get this done? What about this? What do they think of me now? Ah, it's just exhausting. That's the nightmare. The meditation is a normal and natural state, so the idea is to carry that into your waking life, to be that, to appropriate that in your daily life and affairs. There were three things I started to mention at the top of the class, and so many things I want to say, I often get distracted, about the nature of study. Those three tools or approaches or paths, steps, pillars, keys, I don't know what to call them, are meditation, study, like we're doing here in this class. We do both of those, meditation, study. And the third is mindfulness in your daily life and affairs. That's the attempt to live in a meditative state. Not with your eyes closed, but with your eyes open, to maintain those lower brainwave levels. You can live and function in the alpha brainwave level, 10 or 12 cycles per second, rather than high beta up here in the 30s, right? Where the panic and the freak out and all of that is happening. So how do we do that? With practice, like anything else. With meditation, oh yeah, this is home base. This is where I want to live when my eyes are open and I'm moving around in the world, to balance out this limbic brain, this lizard brain that is constantly looking for danger, to override that survival mechanism, to reprogram it. And you know, Mindy, the amazing thing is that people who do mindfulness meditation, as opposed to a concentration meditation, their amygdalas physically become smaller. People who are easily afraid, people who own guns, for example, and usually if you have one gun, you've got a whole lot of guns. The more frightened people are in their daily life and affairs, the larger the amygdala tends to be.
Yeah, that's been CT confirmed on, you can actually Google that.
Right, right. But moreover, mindfulness meditation not only shrinks this fight or flight center, a literal cluster of neurons, a little almond-shaped cluster of neurons, but it actually grows gray and white matter. Your physical brain gets bigger and heavier. This is only 15 years old, this research. The meditation shrinks the fear center and grows the rest of the brain, the actual gray and white matter of the brain. So we've got empirical evidence that it matters. So I guess for now, that's my best answer, Mindy. There is no coming back, ideally. Uh, your default position should be the way you feel in meditation. And when you feel yourself becoming frenzied and overwhelmed or just busied with our to-do lists and the never-ending chores and problems, Just take them one step at a time, bite-sized pieces. Know that there's no there. Nobody ever finished their to-do list. Nobody ever got it together. That's never happened. And we're going to talk more about this in the future. It's about the desire nature and impermanence and the suffering that comes from attempting to satiate our desire, to fulfill the desire. And desires are never filled. Not for long. So that new car you had to have and you dreamed of and you wanted the red one and it had to have this feature and that feature, and then you get it and you're thrilled for a week.
Exactly. I am going to get to another question if you don't mind. And thank you for that. That was a perfect answer. This is from Chris. Michael, you are a longtime journalist. I'm only slightly younger than you, so we both remember when journalism was a respected profession. Now it's mostly a mess. Local newscasts are generally the crime report, weather, and sports. Cable news channels are mostly talk radio with a camera. Very little news, mostly opinions being spouted. And mainstream print journalism, when did it turn into mostly stenography instead of questioning and being investigative? I'm curious, what has happened to journalism and how do we fix it? That about it, Chris?
Well, it's become corrupted by the search for money. So the old standard, if it bleeds, it leads. I'm sure you've heard that. People don't want to know how many dogs were not lost today. They don't want to know how many children were not massacred. Look what happens. Somebody gets a flat tire on the freeway in LA and traffic slows all afternoon, not because there's an accident and dead bodies strewn all over the road. This is some guy changing the tire in the side of the road, and that's sufficient to cause people to begin to slow down, which makes the person behind them slow down. Looky-loos, we called it when we did when we do traffic reports. They're the looky-loos. There's looky-loos slowing on the 405 today. Bill is changing his tire. People want train wrecks. That's one of the ironies of the amygdala, of the fight or flight center, and our awareness in general is that we somehow have this perverse idea that being terrified will help us to be careful. That fear is necessary to be safe. And that feeling safe actually puts you in grave danger. Something will sneak up on you. And so, scare me to death. That's what people want. So as long as it's a commercial enterprise, and that's my answer to your question, Chris, is that's what people are paying for. And the news, the journalism you're talking about was never, at least in TV, profit making. It was something that was done because the FCC required it. Because the airwaves, not cable, but broadcast, radio and TV, has to be in the public interest, convenience, and necessity. Because it's the people's air. So a radio station is licensed, a TV station is licensed for short periods of time to operate on the people's air, and they have responsibility to do the news, to do public service announcements, to do public affairs programming. That's what my show on KLOS was. The only reason it was on for as many years as it was is that it was required by the federal government. Reagan threw that away. The fairness doctrine and a lot of those rules were thrown away. So there was less and less news on the radio. And then cable came in with commentary. What you see as cable news is not news, it's commentary. And that's fine as long as it's labeled commentary. And then there's editorial. These are the three parts of journalism: is news, which is balanced, fair, and objective; commentary, which is just what the word means. So we get Fox News, which is commentary from the right, or Newsmax, and then you get MSNBC and CNN, which I wouldn't call progressive or liberal, but contrasted to the right, they are very different. MSNBC probably more than, but that's not because these people are actually politically. Most of the people on MSNBC are Republicans, you know, with a few exceptions. Um, it's a matter of economic positioning. It's money is the answer to your question. Money. And they found out little by little that news could be a money making operation. And that's when journalistic ethics went out the window. And now it's compounded by the fact that people don't read because they can't read, because their attention, well, the dumbing down of education, underfunding schools, but also technology has drastically reduced the attention span of people and made it very, very difficult for them to read. So newspapers are going under, they're losing money, magazines are going away, and in an attempt to regain some profit margin, they become more sensationalistic, more negative, more hateful, more tribal. Short answer, I think, is money. That's what happened to
Can
it.
I ask another question, or I guess make a comment? I also think they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. I mean, if you turn on any of these cable news shows, which I can't watch anymore, they're so many are sponsored largely in part by pharmaceutical companies.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
I mean, maybe 50%. It's really that high.
Making you sick is profitable for the. By the way, there's only two nations in the world that allow pharmaceuticals to advertise. Did you know that?
I did. New Zealand, I think, is one of them in here.
Yeah.
Hmm.
New Zealand and America. And my source on that is Stephen Colbert, I think, because I only recently learned that. I think it was Colbert. But it's shameful. And you're right. It's just, they're teaching you how to be sick. Mindy could speak to this probably. The tendency of a medical student to develop the symptoms of the diseases that they study as they study them, it shows the power of consciousness and the psychosomatic nature of reality.
Well, I remember, Michael, I remember when advertising medications was first allowed, and that paradigm shift. There were no drug ads on TV, and then they were allowed. And then the suggestion, which stunned me, was here's this medication, take this to your physician and ask them if
Yes, of
you
course.
shouldn't be on it. I'm thinking that's so backwards, but it's all like you said. It's very profitable, and that was
Well, and it also filled a void when they banned tobacco advertising. All of a sudden, the drug companies came in, and the networks had a new source of very large revenue.
Along those same lines, it was a standard when I was a young broadcaster that you could not show people drinking alcohol on TV. And now I see Colbert, he will set up glasses and pull out a glass of a jar of a jar of moonshine, a bottle of whiskey, and he and his guests will sit there drinking whiskey neat on TV, and that was never allowed in the past. So things are changing, not evolving always, often devolving. And the question is, my question anyway, is when will the pendulum swing? When will we're seeing this with guns now. When is enough enough? And people are just exploding and demanding change. And look at the guns. In the same week that the Supreme Court outlaws state laws against open carry, saying, yeah, everybody can have a gun. You don't need to have a reason to carry it openly. Take it to church. Uh, Carry your gun into a bar. Why not? The only place I know guns are banned is the NRA convention, right? Can't bring a gun to the gun manufacturers convention. And yet, in that same week, Congress passes the first gun control legislation in 30 years. So it takes this pain for us to do something, to vote, to get outraged. Women now, thank God this is rallying. I saw it after Trump was first elected. There were millions and millions of women in the streets, and now they're in the streets again. And women have the power to change the world that men don't want changed. And it's really up to the women. I mean, enlightened, gentle men can support our sisters, but it's got to be the women that do it. They've got to go to the polls. They've got to be the poll workers, the organizers, the people who register voters. There are more women than men in this country, and if we can get the women to the polls, we can flush this out and get back on the track. The same administration that gave us so much hope and change, Barack Obama, we thought finally the racists have been defeated, did more to regenerate racism than any of us would have imagined. And that's what's fueling all of this political stuff. It's racism. And racism, my friends, is fear. So let's bring the politics back to the philosophy that is the core of the class. It's all fear and it's all ignorance. And that's our enemy. It seems like an enemy is hatred, but it's actually fear. And we conquer it first in ourselves so that we can be bold enough to step out and in a gentle, intelligent, passionate, and compassionate way educate people. Take the fear out of them. Remember, the people you, quote, oppose, the bad people out there that want more hate, they are terrified. Trump's a great example of a frightened, tormented man. Mm-hmm. He is not happy. When Cheney and Bush and Rumsfeld, all of them multi-millionaires, all of them oil people, waged that war on oil-rich Iraq. These guys have grandchildren and millions in the bank, and they still had to go out and start a war on false pretenses. Every bit as ugly as what's happening in Ukraine. There's no difference between our invasion of Iraq and what Russia is doing in Ukraine, except that Ukraine is white people. So we can nuke Japan, but we would never nuke Germany. We fight communism with war in the East, Vietnam, and Korea. We fight it in Europe with Voice of America, Radio Free Europe. Those are white people. Racism is at the root of all of this, and what is more insane than racism? Well, let me check your skin color to see what kind of person you are. Melanin. Are you kidding me? It's so absurd. Right under racism, of course, are cultural issues. Gay marriage, pot smoking, trans, sex, fluid genders, that kind of freaking out the red states. They are just, they say they want freedom, but they're just freaked out by that. So We got to bring it all back to fear at the root.
Yes, I
And
just wanted to mention briefly Patrick's comment, which I thought was a great summation. He texted to me, "Overcoming fear is my greatest challenge."
yeah, well, that's a good thing. That's a good place to leave it, because if I can take issue with the language, forgive me for being nitpicky. We will never overcome fear, and we don't have to overcome it. I understand it's a figure of speech, and that's the way we talk, and so I understand that. But technically, fear is not to be overcome, it's to be released. And I think that's a great place to end the class. So I've run over a little bit. Thank you so much. Send your friends to that Zoom page. I don't mean that. What am I trying to say? To introduce them to the class, to, to get them signed up for the newsletter. Tell them just to go to michaelbenner.com and click on free Zoom class in the lower right corner of that homepage. And that'll take you to a page with a little video. Check it out. You'll dig it. Check it out. I just did it a few days ago. And that has at the bottom of the page a place to put first name and email. And wham, bam, you're done. Then everybody gets an email with the link to the class every Saturday. Thank you, people. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here and participating as you do. And I hope you have a wonderful week. Namaste, aloha, salam, and we'll see you next week. So long.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.